Generally, when covering analog horror or horror in general, I try to stay as positive as possible. So in turn, I try to cover things that I find interesting or innovative in the subgenre, which is why I get so into the series and shorts that I do in fact like. But I also cover stuff that I think is detrimental to the subgenre, as I fear things moving in what I would consider to be the wrong direction. For example, one of the series that I really liked as of recently was the new Walton Files episode, which added a new creepy direction to the analog horror format that hadn't exactly been done before. I want to see innovation, but things like the Batman analog horror series, for example, seem to do the opposite of innovation, instead wallowing inside the tropes and cliches of the subgenre to the point of being a boring, sloppy mess that can't be interesting for more than 30 seconds. And as I stated in previous videos, I operate my channel in this way because I know the history that comes along with horror, so I understand the lack of innovation kills the subgenres within, which is why I think a lot of things like creepypastas died off, as ideas that lacked innovation came to the forefront and were not only popular but praised, which caused the online subgenre to die off. The same exact thing happened with found footage, as every single film was doing found footage to the point that it became extremely boring and not worth watching. Repetition kills creativity while innovation breeds it, but people don't seem to understand that when giving a negative review to something. That doesn't mean I have a personal vendetta against the creator, as I'm not criticizing the creator, I'm criticizing the creation. That's why, unlike a lot of the other YouTube videos in Urban Spook, I did not mention the drama with Pastor as a reason for disliking it, instead just point out the series as a whole flatlines and is an ambivalent mess. And in all honesty, I really do not like giving things negative feedback because it makes me feel like a dick, but I also know being honest with people is how they actually get help. And when I see an analog horror series constantly popping up in the comments down below, I know what that means. I have to check it out. And of course, one analog horror series has been coming up the most lately, that of course being oh boy, is this going to be a fun one to cover. So for those who couldn't guess, this analog horror is just a recreation of the short kid's story, The Little Red Riding Hood. For those who don't know the story, which is crazy to me, as I feel like everyone has heard it at some point, but oh well. The story follows a little girl named Little Red Riding Hood who is sent to deliver cake to her grandmother. Also, sometimes there's wine, sometimes there's not. It's one of those old folklore tales. While walking on the trail, unbeknownst to her, she is being stalked the whole time by the big bad wolf. She then eventually runs into the wolf, who asks about the food in the basket and what the delivery is for, which the girl explains that it's for her grandmother. The wolf then leaves and rushes to the grandmother's house, eating her and putting her clothes on to disguise himself as the grandmother to capture the girl. Upon arriving, the girl realizes that her grandmother has been replaced by the wolf, and the wolf then proceeds to eat the girl as well, ending the story. It's a classic stranger danger story, and this analog horror represents it pretty closely, despite making a couple of small changes, such as making it so that the wolf has slaughtered all the animal life within the area and having the wolf be more anthropomorphic. Changes that when I get to later, I'll explain whether or not I think they're any good, but that's later. But besides that, it's a pretty straightforward retelling, except it kills the mother at the end as well, but there's not too many changes, so let's get on to my thoughts. So I really tried to give this series a full chance. It's the biggest new analog horror series in quite a while, so I gave a hope that this would be something new and innovative. But oh boy, was I completely and utterly wrong. But before going any further, make sure that if you aren't already subscribed to the channel, to subscribe and like the video if you enjoy it. Also, if you would like to, leave a comment on whether or not you agree with my opinion, and let's continue. While Basswood County for me had plenty of problems with originality, being so close to the Mandela catalog to where I think it could honestly be considered a remake, it was at least more original and innovative than this is. This one seems to take a lot of the worst elements of other analog horror series and combines them together. First off, the presentation choices in this are just strange, as while it has a fully animated style, instead of just hiring voice actors characters or text-to-speech. They instead just go to the strange route of video game-style text boxes. Like, really, it feels like this is closer to Phoenix Wright than other analog horror series. It's just strange and doesn't really make sense presentation-wise. It's a very odd presentation choice that I just don't think really works, as it feels more like a video game cutscene than an animated short, which I'm guessing this is supposed to represent. The presentation just fails at convincing me that this is some lost VHS tape from the 80s or 90s, as the presentation just seems honestly like an afterthought. And in combination with the text-to-speech voices and regular dialogue, it just makes it a mess all around presentation-wise. And then there's the sound design, which analog horror is usually known for excelling at with creepy atmospheres and distorted music. But this short doesn't include any of that, instead focusing sound-wise on overly oppressive static, which is made even funnier by the fact that the static loop that is used isn't perfect. Instead, the cutoffs of the static are left in, so there's just points of it where the static will leave and come back in. And not done in a way that adds to the story. We can tell it's just a mistake, and it makes it kind of funny. But in all honesty, this is one of the aspects that disappointed me the most, as normally sound design is what sets analog horror apart from many of the other horror subgenres due to its more oppressive style, but this fails at that. Which to me is just sad, because that's one of the things I can give almost every single series, even the ones that I'm not even a particular fan of. Then there's the animation. Oh boy, don't even get me started on the animation. Animation is one of the most difficult things to do, and honestly, I give it points for even trying to pull this off. Kudos to where it's deserved. But I really can't understand putting all the time and effort into fully animating an episode and having an art style that's the exact one-to-one replica of an already popular series. I really cannot understand that, as to me, instead of coming as an interesting idea, it just comes across as lazy and makes me wonder what even was the thought process behind the creation of this series. And in all honesty, the popularity of this one just really disappoints me, as has analog horror just been so watered down that an obviously cliche-ridden mess is pushed to the forefront as a way of trying to keep this subgenre in any way relevant. Hell, this one even does the tried and true cliche of, oh, it's just killing for fun, not for food. And this is just confirming what I've been saying for months now, which is that the subgenre is just going to keep getting worse and worse because people do not learn from the mistakes of past series and instead just keep turning out low effort slop in order to earn money as fast as possible. It annoys the absolute hell out of me because I know there are so many concepts out there that could work extremely well with the analog presentation style, but the possibility of the format just seems to be absolutely squandered in order to make just another video that panders to children. And this one just happens to be the one that takes a lot of the worst aspects of each of them. Every time we see the damn wolf in this series, it does just another comically stretched out face. Like, please, I'm begging, come up with something different for once. It's annoying to see the same thing over and over again. And this isn't limited to just this series, as a lot of the subgenre as a whole is falling into this cycle that just isn't sustainable. It's going to crash very soon if it keeps doing this over and over again because people are making the same things and it's just going to keep getting more monotonous with time. And I can tell this person is probably very talented, as they were able to make a fully animated horror short off of The Little Red Riding Hood, a children's story, but it feels a lot like the potential of it is squandered by the lack of originality. And with horror, more than any other subgenre, originality is a key to success, as an original scare that you don't see coming is going to punch and hit much harder than the same scare that you've seen in 100 other horror series. This is why I emphasize it so much, as without originality, horror falls extremely flat and gets boring really fast, as a lot of the horror comes from surprise, and without originality, there is no surprise whatsoever. And I know people are going to be saying, hey, this is obviously made for children, why are you acting like this is made for adults? And while that may be true, even for children's horror content, this falls extremely flat. For example, the Minecraft analog horror I covered, while it was still pretty flat and not super interesting, it still had more going on and more originality than this one had in its entire runtime. And this one had one of the worst scares I had seen in quite a while, and it's gotta be the one with the partially devoured bunny. It's goofy and just goes on for way too long, and honestly shocked that they added it in because it plays like a bad creepypasta like Sonic.exe, for example. And there are 3 of these things, which is just absolutely baffling to me, because they all have the same issues with presentation, storytelling, and scares. None of it works. And it sucks because from the creators' videos before, I can tell they have talent and skill, but this series just doesn't do it for me whatsoever. It just feels lazy and boring, showcasing a lot of the issues that are plaguing analog horror at this moment. But this one does it to the most extreme degree that I have seen in a while, with the last time I saw a series this flat being the Batman analog horror series. Thus, when trying to give a score to this, I had to be honest with myself, and I can only really give it the simple score of 2 out of 10, with really the only reason behind it not being a 1 being the fact that it's fully animated, which takes tons of effort. I really did not like this, and I'm sorry for that, but I just could not get behind this series. And before this video ends, I just want to say thank you all for 6,000 subscribers. It's insane to see that level of growth within 1 year. And also, I'd like to point out that I have a new microphone, so I hope you like it, and I'll see you all next week.